Mic check 1 2. It's the Y2K collector. So some of you know, if you saw my last video, that I mentioned that I'm very much into videography and photography. And one of the main cameras that I use to do a lot of my filming is the Lumix GH5. This is a camera that I got years ago, and I think that this camera still holds up pretty well in 2025. Now, the GH5 is pretty much a micro four thirds camera. And if you're not familiar with, for those of you who are into videography, you'll know the difference between like a micro four thirds and a full frame camera. But at the time that I was doing videography, I didn't want to get too crazy and have too many cameras, because videography, camera gear can sometimes be like, video games. Once you start collecting one, you want to collect a bunch. The only difference is that cameras are way more expensive than video games, whether they be new or old. I got the GH5 at a time when it was at least 4 to maybe 5 years old. And even back then, this camera was still roughly around $1,500. So video cameras are not cheap at all. And lenses are also not cheap at all, especially if you get like a quality lens. Um, now, like I said, the GH5 is a micro four thirds camera, and at the time I wanted to have a micro four thirds, and then I also wanted to make sure that I had a full frame camera as well. And for a long time, I would go back and forth between whether I wanted to go with Sony cameras and stay in the Sony ecosystem, or if I wanted to stay in the Canon ecosystem. And in general, Canon is known for its colors, and it's more so known for its photography, whereas Sony is known more so for its, I kind of want to say its videography, its sharpness, and a lot of its features. Also, Canon does have very good lenses, or glass as we call it. Canon is known for its glass. And Sony, I would say that from my perspective, every camera company has like a middle of the road, like an economy tier of lenses that you can purchase from. And then they have like one step above that, which is like pretty good. And then they have their like top of the line lenses that you can get. And usually what you see in the difference is usually the difference in clarity, quality, things like that. And I just felt like I feel like Canon has better glass at the economy level. Now, Sony does have good glass, or they do have great lenses, but you kind of have to go up a tier. And once you get up into that higher tier of Sony lenses, it starts to get pretty expensive, like really, really expensive. Now, this is a Canon 24 to 105 millimeter L series lens. And even today, despite this lens being really old, it's still a $600 lens. Now I'm using an adapter to adapt this Canon lens onto this micro four thirds camera. Just because I like the autofocus on this lens, I like the image quality, and I like the image stabilization. So that's why I use this type of lens. But one of the cameras that the main camera that I really learned to do videography on was my Sony A7S. Now, Sony has a number of different camera lines. They have the Sony A7, the Sony A7 II. There used to be a Sony A7R, but they stopped making that line. And then, of course, the A7S. Now, the A7S for a long time was known as the low light king. Basically, it was a camera that you could use to shoot in the dark. Like, you could literally film in the dark. I've taken that camera out to the beach at night and have gotten amazing shots of just the beach, the night skyline. A lot of people use it for astro videography, and that's because it has a very high ISO, and so the sensor can take in a lot of light. Basically, the camera sensor has a really large eyeball that takes in a lot of light and allows you to shoot in very low light settings. And that was really big for me because I did a lot of running and gunning photography on that camera. But the Sony A7S was limited by its technology. That camera too is a very old camera, and it was my first full frame camera. But now here in 2025, I do want to get back into videography, and I do love the GH5 because of all of the different things that I could do in terms of, like in terms of manipulating the image, playing with the colors, playing with the visual effects of things. I'm able to do a lot of that with the GH5, but the A7S is just a camera that I had come to master for what I wanted to do with it. I became very familiar with it. Unfortunately, my Sony A7S actually wound up breaking, and like I was in Manhattan, I was shooting one day, I dropped it and the viewfinder completely shattered and I was heartbroken. And I still use that camera for like another 2 years to shoot video. I actually used it to get video footage of graduations, vacations, things like that. But the problem with that camera is that it has a very short battery life. The battery on that camera does not last long at all. And so I would have to walk with like 5 batteries in my pocket if I just wanted to make it through one afternoon of shooting, which can be tough, which can be really, really tough. So on top of that, the Sony A7S didn't have an articulating screen, meaning it didn't have a screen that could pop out and I could use to like see myself. So it made like video, like, you know, taking videos of yourself very difficult because you couldn't see the image because of that fixed screen. So why am I telling you guys all of this? Well, I'm telling you guys all of this because my plan for this summer, by the end of June, is to actually get the most recent version of the Sony A7S, which is the Sony A7S III. Now that camera is a very old camera, not very old, but it's an old camera at this point. When it first came out, it was probably like a $5,000 to $6,000 camera. Thankfully, because it's considered old now, quote unquote, now I think it's under, you can get it for under 3 grand, which is still expensive, right? It's still 3 grand, like that's a car in some cases, but it's a very good camera. And I do have lenses that I can use on that camera. I still have so I have, I think this is, so I do have my 18-105 lens. So this is a Sony G Master lens. It has image stabilization and zoom. As you can see, this one has a lot of wear and tear on it because I've used this lens a ton. The only problem with this lens is that it doesn't let in a lot of light. I think this has a 3.5 aperture, and I think it goes down even lower when you zoom in. So this lens is cool, but it's really mainly useful like if I'm going to be outdoors. Thankfully, using it with the Sony A7S, because it's a low light camera, it made it possible for me to use this lens, but this wasn't the best lens and it didn't produce the best colors. But I also use like retro lenses. I don't just do retro games, but I also do retro lenses on cameras. And so I actually have an adapter that allowed me to adapt some of my retro, like really old school Canon lenses to my Sony camera. Now these lenses are really heavy, and it kind of gets heavy if you're like walking around with a camera all day. These lenses are pretty darn hefty because they have old school glass in them. But I really do like these lenses because they produce a very unique type of image. When you film with these lenses, it gives you like a very soft, creamy, old school image that it's an image that you would get like if you're watching a movie and they do like a flashback to a time back in like the 1950s or 60s. Sometimes they apply this like soft, like creamy filter to it. And that's an image that you naturally get out of this lens. So I think like it's really cool. For all of my videography, I really don't like doing a lot of post-production when it comes to videography, which means that when I shoot, shoot on the camera, I typically try to shoot all my scenes like as much in the finished product form as I can. So I don't use a lot of LUTs. I don't use a lot of LUT packs and things like that to try to alter the image. I try to just get to know the camera well enough to be able to shoot the exact image I want straight out of the camera. And that only comes when you use the same camera over and over and over again, and you learn the settings and you learn like the different S logs and V logs and just all the different settings of the camera. So I'm saying all that to say that, yeah, I will be, part of what I'm doing with the money that I get from selling off some of the collection is I'm building up that fund to get that Sony A7S III. And I'm really excited to get that camera because, photography and videography is a really cool hobby. And it's a hobby that like once you get the camera, obviously, you don't have to keep buying and buying and buying. All you need is like a good camera with a good lens that works for you. And you can really rock out with that camera and lens for a really long time. The same way you have like different YouTube channels based on video game pickups and retro game pickups, there are a ton of photography and videography channels out there on YouTube. And it's kind of the same thing. They're always talking about the newest camera and the newest camera and the newest camera. I mean, up until like a couple months ago, like maybe 5, 6 months ago, I was using like a 10-year-old camera, and it's really not the camera. It's about what you're trying to shoot and how you want to utilize like that camera. And I think the best thing for anyone who is thinking about doing videography or photography, the best thing you could do is pick a camera and stick with that camera. I would say any camera that's been released within the last 10 years is more than capable of giving you high quality video footage or high quality photos, because the technology is just so advanced. So, but yeah, this is the type of stuff that you'll see more on my Patreon once I actually launch it. I am working on a Patreon which will still talk about video games, but it's going to get into other things like videography and photography. There's a lot of information that I have to share. I also have a lot of really cool images that I've shot back in the day. I've done a few projects, I've done a few interviews. I've actually been published on television for some things that you may not know that I was involved in. Usually I like to keep a really low profile, but some of my work has been on television. And so this is going to be kind of some of the stuff that you get when you join the Patreon. So really excited to get back into this hobby, because I'm very much excited about this hobby as I am retro games. So more to come on that. But I figured I figured I was gonna kind of share some of this with the general Y2K crew. So if it's something you're interested in, stay tuned for the Patreon information. I'll have that for you. And yeah, that's really all I got. No pickups for me today. I did get 2 games that came in from GameStop. Nothing really worth sharing here. Maybe I'll do a wrap up at the end of the week with, you know, where all the dust settled from the buy two get one, because I think today was the last package of buy two get one games from 2 weeks ago now. So I'll do like a full April wrap up and May startup. But as I said, I've been really pausing on the pickups, still downsizing. If you look, I mean, look at some of these shelves. Like, these shelves are starting to get pretty bare. But yeah, I'm just kind of getting some things out of here. So more to come on that and more to share with you guys. But until then, I'll catch you in the next video. It's the Y2K Collector. Take it easy.